in our house, we were leaving. All my family were out of Kuwait. I was the only one in Kuwait. Me and my grandpa and one of my uncles were in Kuwait. And I remember we're leaving from our house and we're going to our neighbor's house. We have to cross the street and go to our neighbor's house. And all of a sudden, we see these cars that are just moving very fast. And it's very, at that time, there's no cars. There's curfews, you don't see cars. So just seeing cars, you know, there's like agents, and so we were just hiding, running behind cars, not to be spotted. 24 hours from that point, I didn't know, but I would be in one of those cars, captured. Now I haven't told this story in a public setting before. This is the first time I share it. Some of it is going to be embarrassing, but I'm going to say it anyways. She's laughing, she knows part of it. I remember the next morning when that happened, I'm 17 years old, and I'm going to go visit my dad's friends, the Diwaniya. My dad was out of Kuwait, but we go to his Diwaniya, his friend's Diwaniya. But my uncle said, don't go. We had no electricity for 2 days. There's no water. So we don't know what's happening. You can't talk to anybody else. But they say they're taking kids from the street. They're taking Kuwaitis from the street. And I'm like an arrogant 17-year-old. I said, you know, I'm not going to listen to anybody, so I go. And at the Diwaniya, it was very, I can see it's a little bit different. There's a lot of tension in the room. All the guys are putting foil on the windows so nobody can see inside. And then I remember my uncle saying not to go, and I'm like, I'm going to go anyways. And so when I go there, about 15 minutes later, I see my uncle walk into the Diwaniya. And I'm like, what are you doing here? You just told me not to go. He said, I don't know what to tell your parents if something happens to you. So on our way back home, we saw an Iraqi car just pass by. And we just hid behind cars, and I felt really good. So we ran to our house. Right before we ran, another car stopped us. And at that point, a couple of months ago, I had broken my foot, so I started like limping a little bit. And the guy's like, come in the car. I'm like, where are you from? He's like, and I was like, I'm from Kuwait. He's like, there's no such thing called Kuwait. You're from Iraq. Wait it's on Iraqi. Just live with it. And I remember, like, when I'm sitting in the car, I feel so bad because I'm sitting right next to my uncle, and my uncle is like looking at me, and I'm like, I'm the reason they caught him. It felt horrible. Like, that's what I was thinking about. And then we stayed in that car as they go through our neighborhood, and they're catching other kids, other guys. So they used to take anybody. This is right before Kuwait was liberated. And I remember they took us to Makhfar Adeliya, the police station at Adeliya. It's it's the first time I'm in a police station in what do they call it? Zinzana, like a cell. And it was horrible. People are crying, and there's this small little room where somebody's in and they're bleeding, they've been tortured or something like that. And so the mood was very dark, and all these people are just crying and they're nervous, and I'm sitting on the floor, and my uncle is right in front of me. At that point, I tell him a joke. I don't know why that happened, but I tell him a joke, and he starts laughing. And then he comes and tells me a joke, and I start laughing. And we spent that like few hours telling jokes to each other, and I didn't realize this lesson till later on, that you know what, your inner world controls your outer world. I didn't realize that till years and years later. Anyways, after that, they started taking us to Sijn al-Ahdath, like where juvenile prison. That's where they kept the Kuwaitis before they take them to Iraq. And so I was in one of those cars that I've seen 24 hours ago, whizzing by. So at that prison, I saw a lot of my friends, a lot of high school friends. And actually, right before they took us to prison, I remember we're waiting in line, and my uncle was right next to me, and they're like, this sergeant was yelling and screaming and things like that. And then we're just straight of us, and I remember my uncle just punching me here. He's like, look over here. And I look, and it's my brother-in-law. They caught him too. Yes. I know. So and then the officer was saying this speech, like, anybody sick, anybody has an illness, anybody not feeling good? And I'm like, I did, you know, like I broke my foot, and I'm like really exaggerating. And the soldier that caught me is like, and so they took me to the other side, and now I'm watching my uncle and there's these couple old guys with me, and they're gonna take us to our home to prove that we're sick or something. And I remember stories, I'm sure you've seen like Holocaust and things like that, where the sick, they take them outside and then they shoot them. Yeah. That's what's going in my head. I'm like, holy shit, what did I do? And I'm looking at the other side and they're like, are you sure you're sick? And I'm like, you know what, I'm okay. And I walk back. Because I was thinking, if they take me back and they don't really listen to what I, like my proof, then I will never see my uncle again. I will be in prison by myself. At least I have somebody with me. So we stayed in the juvenile prison for maybe 3 or 4 days, and it was such a psychological, they're masters. Like if you ever think about escaping, there's no way. Because every 2 hours you would wake up and they would move you from cell to cell, and the whole time like you would not sleep 24 hours. Luckily, I was sitting in a room inside, and sometimes they bring us food, and one of my friends from high school I saw, he's like, you know what? They called your name several times, and I'm lucky I didn't hear, because a lot of the people that they called their name, they were never to be heard of again. They went to Baghdad, or Mosul, whatever, and they never showed up again. So finally, now it's 4 days. Now it's time to go to Iraq. Of course, I didn't know that then. And we're just lined up outside the prison. And I remember the Iraqis are listening to a radio channel, and they're just, I was the youngest one, I was 17. And they're listening to the radio channel, and they're switching, and they're like, oh, we blew like 13,000 airplanes from the Americans, and I know it's all lies, but that's what they tell us. Finally, they put us on buses, and now we're heading to Iraq. Anybody see those, like when you're watching, I'm sure you've seen like historical videos of like these buses or cars going, and these bombs are left and right? So this is like on our way to Iraq. I was in one of those buses, and as we're driving, you see tanks being blown up and right, and our fear is we are going to be one of those buses are going to be blown up. So we're afraid of the Americans now. At one point, the bus driver, he was afraid, he stopped and he left the car. And we're yelling for him to come back and drive us back to Iraq. It's safer over there. Anyways, we finally end up in Basra, and we were in prison. We were like, there's 4 barracks, there's 1,200 people. I was one of the lucky ones. We were the last people to get captured, and we happened to be the first people to get released. So we're 1,200 people, 4 barracks, every 300 people in a barracks. It is so tight, like it was, if you sleep, you only can sleep in one side, you cannot move. Oh, I forgot the story. This is a long, I'm gonna try to abbreviate, but I have to tell you this part. So I remember, like right now, it's the war is over, and now the fear is even more, because now we're thinking, you know what? They forgot about us. I know back then, there was, at that time, if anybody you remember, they were releasing some of the Iranian prisoners at that time, after 10 years of war. And I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe I'll be there for another 10, 15 years. So I don't know how long I'm gonna be there. Like tension is a lot, like at night, no lights, because we're afraid the Americans are gonna bomb us because we're in a military base. So they are using us as human shields. And so every few of us has a group, like there's 6 or 7, 8 guys, they would sit together, they would eat together. I was so, claustrophobic was the last thing you think about. But I had no energy. Walking to Mohammed Saloon, I would be really exhausted, and I would have to sit down. And with all of this, it's freezing. We didn't have any really clothes. They just took us. And we didn't get any food. The only food we got, I actually still have that bread. I have one piece of bread that is just, it's like almost a rock right now. And the water we get is like from puddles. Like, so it's thicker than milk, brown, but you drink it, and because that's what you get used to, you have to survive. So we are ready to go to bed. They're gonna turn the lights off. Actually, anybody who wants to smoke a cigarette, everybody in the prison or in the cell would scream at him because they're afraid pilots would see that and they would bomb that space. And so I am the last guy in our group. I'm on this side. And then on the other side, there's this other group. They're all more religious group. They're good guys. and I'm sleeping now. I'm barely sleeping. And as I'm sleeping, this guy snores like you can't believe. Like really, really freaking loud. Like all of this fear and pain and like I'm cold, and this guy's snoring. So I don't know how, but I flip over and accidentally I kick him. So he stopped for a little bit.
Accidentally, huh?
Accidentally, it was accidentally the first time. And so after a few minutes, he started again. And then I turn around and I do an undercut. And he stops again, and we were doing that all night. That guy never slept next to me again. I remember the second night, the guy next to me, we were getting ready to turn the lights off. He's like, I heard you hit at night. One of the things that I remember, what we talk about, it's interesting when you're in situations like that. You guys have pizza?
Yeah.
What we think about is the crumbs of the pizza that we throw away. That's what I think about. That's the thing that we waste before, and that's what I value the most. Okay. I'm gonna tell this part.
He looks at the children.
So my uncle and I, we had a bet. We were thinking we're not gonna be there for very long. And we said, you know what? I'm not gonna take a dump in this country. I'm gonna hold it all the way till I get to Kuwait. Yes. And this is, now it's probably like the 27th or 28th of February, and we're now in Basra. And so secretly I'm in fear, like, okay, what if we stay too long? What will happen? The good thing is we're not eating that much, so there's not a lot of stuff moving there. So I put a deadline for myself. I said, okay, I don't care about him. I didn't tell him, but my goal was March 5th. If by March 5th, they don't release us, I'm going to release it. So March 5th comes, and I say, I got to do it. I tell my uncle, I can't hold on anymore. I'm just going to do it. And so there's no bathrooms. So when you go out of the barracks, it's like open space, and you just have to squat, and you just do it. That's my God. It wasn't a pleasant experience. It was painful. But I did it. I remember another thing that I recall. We were in this barracks, so there's this open space where I had to release something, but there's a big wall outside. So this is all we can see. We can't see beyond that. And I remember there's this guy that is within our group, within the 8 guys. He was I can't remember, some sort of martial arts. And you guys know Ali Kimyai? You heard the name? So he came to our prison. So he was one of the guys that came to our prison. And so this guy, he had a plan. He's like, you know what? We can take them over. We can like the next time the sergeant come in, if 2 of us, we can handle him, we can run, and then we can cross the wall, and then we'll just walk to Kuwait from Basra. I'm serious, it was serious, he was really thinking about it. Thank God I didn't listen to him. Because when they finally decided they're going to release us, because some people are getting sick, and the Shiite Sunni, the Shiites rise against Saddam Hussein, they couldn't feed us, a lot of people were getting really sick. So they put us on these trucks for cattle, trucks, so we were standing, malkhufan. And then they're going to take us to the border. And so we're all standing, it's just standing room only, and we're just standing, we're going out. 4 hours driving, and you're standing up. And the thing is, as soon as we get out of the gate, the whole freaking army was there. So if we crossed, if we jumped, we would be dead completely. So 4 hours in, and after doing that, not going to the bathroom for all that time, I really stink. And standing up there, nobody knows who did it. So this guy right next to me, every time he smells oh, this stinks. And I'm like, yeah, it does. Who is that? Finally, we made it to Kuwait, but in Kuwait, there's no buses to take us. They didn't know that we're coming. All the buses, most of them were stolen, so we had to wait 6 or 7 hours for buses to come from Saudi Arabia to take us to Kuwait. Finally, I made it home. But the one thing I remember is after 2 or 3 days, it's usually most of the people in Kuwait were leaving to go visit their families and things like that. It was very, very hard to come to Kuwait. My dad was fighting to come back to Kuwait. So he left the whole family there and he came in. And I remember I was sitting in my grandfather's house. There's no TV, there's no electricity, there's nothing. And all of a sudden, the door opens and my father walks in. And they heard that I was a prisoner of war, but he had no idea that I was released. And as soon as he comes in, he puts his bags in with another guy that drove together, and he looks up, he's like, Ali, alhamdulillah. And he went from like how happy he was, he actually got the wrong bag. He took the other guy's bag. So that's my story. I hope you enjoyed it.